The truck and bulldozers set out toward the city, with the column of robots marching a fair distance behind. The latter approached the ambush, drew abreast, began to pass. Blackie raised himself to a crouch, with just the tips of his fingers steadying him. As the last robot plodded by, he surged out of the brush, joined to Red Mike by their grips on the 20 feet of rope. They ran up behind the marching machine, trailed by the others. In his right hand, Blackie twirled the part of the rope hanging between him and Mike. On the second swing, he got it over the head of the robot. He saw Mike brace himself. The robot staggered. It pivoted clumsily to its left, groping vaguely for the hindrance. Mike and Blackie tugged again, and the machine wound up facing them in its efforts to maintain balance. Its companions marched steadily along the road. "Switch ends!" barked Blackie. Alert, Mike tossed him the other end of the rope and caught Blackie's. They ran past the robot on either side, looping it in. Blackie kept going until he was above the ditch. He wound a turn of rope about his forearm and plunged down the bank. With skill of long practice, they brought the robot down. A shower of gravel spattered after him as Mike jammed his heels into the shoulder of the highway to anchor the other end. Then he heard the booming sound of the robot's fall. Blackie clawed his way up the bank. Vito and Sid were smashing furiously at the floundering machine. Mike danced about the melee with bared teeth, charging in once as if to leap upon the quarry with both feet. Frustrated by the peril of the whirling 2x4s, he swept up handfuls of gravel to hurl. Blackie turned to run for one of the axes. Just then, Sid struck home to the head of the robot. Sparks spat out amid a tinkle of glass. The machine ceased all motion. "All right," panted Blackie. "All right, that's enough." They stepped back, snarls fading. A handful of gravel trickled through Mike's fingers and pattered loudly on the concrete. Gradually, the men began to straighten up, seeing the robot as an inert heap of metal, rather than as a weird beast in its death throes. "We better load up and get," said Blackie. "We want to be over on the trail if they send something up the road to look for this." Vito dragged the robot off the highway by the head, and they began the task of lashing it to the 2x4s. It was about 2 hours later when they plodded around a street corner among the ruins and stopped before a fairly intact building. By that time they had picked up an escort of dirty, half-clad children who ran ahead to spread the news. 2 other men and a handful of women gathered around with eager exclamations. The hunters dropped their catch. "Better get to work on him," said Blackie, glancing at the sky. "Be dark soon." The men who had remained as guards ran inside the entrance of polished granite and brought out tools: hammers, crowbars, hatchets. Behind them hurried women with basins and large cans. The original 4, weary from the weight of the robot despite frequent pauses on the trail, stepped back. "Where's first, Blackie?" asked one of the men, waiting for the women to untangle the rope and timbers. "Try all the joints. After that, we'll crack 'em open down the middle for the main supply tank." He watched the metal give way under the blows. As the robot was dismembered, the fluid that had lubricated the complex mechanism flowed from its wounds and was poured by the women into a 5-gallon can. "Bring a cupful, Judy," Blackie told his woman, a wiry blonde girl. "I want to see if it's as good as the last." He lit a stick at the fire as they crossed the littered, once ornate lobby, and she followed him down a dim hall. He pulled aside the skins that covered their doorway, then stumbled his way to the table. The window was still uncovered against the night chill, but it looked out on a courtyard shadowed by towering walls. To eyes adjusted to the sunny street, the room was dark. Judy poured the oil into the makeshift lamp, waiting for the rag wick to soak, and held it out to Blackie. He lit the wick from his stick. "It burns real good, Blackie," the girl said, wrinkling her nose against the first oily smoke. "Gee, you're smart to catch one the first day out." "Tell them other dames to watch how they use it," he warned. "This oughta last a month, or more, when we get 'em all emptied." He blew out the dying flame on the stick and dropped the charred wood thoughtfully to the floor. "Nah, I ain't so smart," he admitted, "or I'd figured a way to make one of them work the garden for us. Maybe some day. But this kind won't do nothin' but fix that goddam road, and what good's that to anybody?" His woman moved the burning lamp carefully to the center of the table. "Anyway, it's gonna be better'n last winter," she said. "We'll have lights now." End of Let There Be Light by Horace Brown Fife.